It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
And the phone number remains the same as always, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric return next Sunday night, Monday morning. There's a lot going on. As you can imagine, in the Middle East, we'll get into that here in a little bit. I do have some headlines for you. One of the things that we're going to talk about is Rashida Tlaib. I mean, it's almost easy pickings with Congressman or Congresswoman Tlaib, because she says things that are so incredibly false, number one, and number two, she just sounds hysterical. And as she is exhibiting her hysteria, her lies continue to permeate day after day after day. And, you know, typically when it comes to members of the squad, you know, their lies, you almost, if you're a person who reads a lot, you know what's going on, you can pick out the lies fairly easily. But what Rashida Tlaib continues to say about the bombing of this hospital in Gaza is actually incredibly destructive. So we're going to get into that straight ahead, and I will prove to you how much of a liar Rashida Tlaib and the squad is coming up right here on Red Eye Radio. You can find out more about me on my Twitter feed at Dan Mandis Show. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as well, and I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. That runs from 6 to 10 Eastern Time, and you can find out more about that at 997WTN.com. So a couple of headlines for you real quick, because it is important. First of all, we do see now that the Biden administration sending another naval carrier out to the region. The United States Navy is sending another warship to the eastern Mediterranean as tensions in the Middle East rise amid the Israel-Hamas war. The USS Mount Whitney, the Navy's command and control ship, is on its way. It left yesterday, to join the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group and the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group as well, in support of our operations in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Now, they're calling this, and this is why I find this so interesting, they're calling this the most sophisticated command, control, communications, and intelligence ship ever commissioned. According to the Navy, the USS Mount Whitney was the tactical command hub for the U.S. military's Operation Odyssey Dawn against the Libyan regime back in 2011. So there is that story for you that is breaking tonight. And also the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they are attacking Hezbollah military targets in the north. Joe Biden now admitting he is worried about terrorist organizations getting involved in the Israel-Hamas war. Hezbollah, of course, just like Hamas, they are financed and bankrolled by Iran. So we now have this war opening up on multiple fronts. We'll keep you updated on all of these stories as the evening progresses right here on Red Eye Radio. And again, the phone number remains 866-90-RED-EYE. So here is some audio from Rashida Tlaib, member of the squad, and I just want you to listen to this, because on the one hand, it is rather entertaining to listen to. I find myself, after so many years of hosting talk radio shows, I find myself really more bemused than angry at this point with some of these folks. But what she says, and what some of these people who are supportive of Hamas, what they're saying and the lies that they're telling are actually dangerous, because this is a sitting member of Congress, and she is lying about one of our biggest allies, Israel. Listen.
And to my president, to our president, yes, he's still on. Well, hold on. I want him to know, as a Palestinian American, is also somebody of Muslim faith, I'm not going to forget this. And I think a lot of people are not going to forget this. And it's not a threat. It isn't. They think we're joking. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the White House and everyone thinks that we're just going to sit back and let this just continue to happen. No. The fact of the matter is, our lives are not safe with you or the forever peach president.
I mean, listen to that.
When are we going to feel safe? When are we going to stop funding continued, literally, oppression of indigenous communities? When are we going to say enough?
And, you know, it's like her words are being spoken in a vacuum. Now, obviously, what she is screaming about, among other things, of course, is the U.S. funding for Israel. That was part of the news yesterday afternoon, where the Biden administration is coming out now, and they are going to support Israel as we go through all of this. $100 billion, as a matter of fact, is a big package that the president apparently is going to push through. And we'll get into that because some of it is going to go to Israel. But I have a feeling that the vast majority of that $100 billion is ultimately going to end up going to Ukraine. We'll get into that straight ahead. But obviously with Rashida Tlaib, she is screaming about the U.S. funding for Israel, but realize that she's taking all of this out of context. The real reason that Israel needs help is because Hamas, supported by many Palestinians, attacked Israel. And so she's screeching into her bad audio system that, we're supporting Israel and, all of this. They scream about occupation and all of these other things. But in reality, Israel was attacked. That's why this is going on. And she calls herself a Palestinian American. Well, as a Palestinian American, I would ask her the question, do you support Hamas? And do you support the fact that Hamas attacked Israel? I mean, that's the bottom line. She seems to forget, by the way, that Joe Biden, and it sounds like I'm defending him, please, but I'm not. But it sounds like she is forgetting that Joe Biden, she's forgetting that Biden allows Iran to skirt those sanctions, and that means that Iran gives Hamas billions of dollars. Hamas attacks the nation Rashida Tlaib hates, Israel. So I would ask Rashida Tlaib, you're screeching about Joe Biden and how you're not going to forget this. Well, it seems to me like Joe Biden has done a heck of a lot for Iran. And Iran, again, funding Hamas. Hamas attacks Israel, the nation that you hate. So I would ask Rashida Tlaib, what's the problem? Seems to me like you and Biden are simpatico on all of this because he's giving Iran a crap ton of money. And ultimately that money goes to Hamas. And remember this story, by the way, from the other day. The Biden administration sending millions of dollars to a group accused of being an arm of Hamas. Biden sent a total of $730 million to this organization called the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Now, this agency, Donald Trump, if you remember me telling you about this story earlier in the week, Donald Trump stopped funding this very organization during his presidency because there's all kinds of intel out there that does show that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency is an arm of Hamas. They fund schools that teach anti-Semitism. They actually found rockets from Hamas embedded in these schools, hidden in these schools. And Biden is funding it. He actually, believe it or not, friends, he sent out, and his State Department sent out a memo, sent out a press release, patting themselves on the back because they gave this arm of Hamas $730 million. Congratulations, Joe. So I ask Rashida Tlaib, what is the problem? Seems like Biden is doing everything that he possibly can to make Hamas even stronger, just like Iran. Both of those entities constantly attacking Israel, the nation that you hate. So when you say, Rashida Tlaib, I'm not going to forget this, my question to you is this. What is it you're not going to forget? Because it does seem like you are forgetting that Joe Biden is in the pockets of the terrorist organizations, the organizations that you support. Now, I know that he went to Israel. I know that he hugged Benjamin Netanyahu. But you know what I would say is follow the money. Biden has allowed Iran to flourish with the tens of billions of dollars, funding, again, this arm of Hamas with $730 million. So, again, it seems to me like Biden has been very friendly to these terrorist organizations. Rashida Tlaib, she goes on and talks more about her anger with not only the Biden administration, but really with America.
It makes me so angry to have to say, but I'm telling you, I'm talking to people that literally are like me. They literally believed in this party that was supposed to be inclusive of all of our opinions and our views and our political stance and all of these things. But what is starting to get really, really, really clear and very loud is that somehow many of us in this room, because of our political opinions, because maybe our faith is a certain faith, maybe because our ethnicity is a certain ethnicity, that somehow we're subhuman.
So it's kind of weird that she would say that, actually, that she's part of this culture that apparently the American people feel is subhuman. But it's her culture that believes that Israel and the people of Israel, the Jewish people, should not exist. She's part of the BDS movement, boycott, divest, and sanction movement, of course, that attacks Israel's economy. She also says that people, again, see them as subhuman. I don't see that at all. You know, I'm a very live and let live kind of person. I think most folks have zero issue with who they worship. But we cannot believe that anyone would support or justify what we saw, this attack on Israel weekend before last. So, yeah, I would say anyone who justifies this attack on Israel is subhuman. It should also be noted, by the way, that President Biden was on his way to meet with the leaders of Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority, and it was Jordan who backed out. So our American president was on his way to go meet with all of these different nations, these Arab nations, and ultimately it was the Arab nations that pulled out. So I guess my question to Rashida Tlaib, shouldn't you be screeching in your bad audio system? Shouldn't you be yelling at the leaders of Jordan, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority for pulling out of that meeting with Joe Biden, as opposed to screeching at Joe Biden? I mean, don't get me wrong. We're both pissed at Joe Biden just for different reasons, I would say to Rashida Tlaib. But here's the other thing as she is screaming about all this. You know, Biden is giving Gaza $100 million in aid. But you know that Hamas, who runs Gaza, and the Palestinian Authority, who run the West Bank, both of these entities are incredibly corrupt. And that was one of the big questions as everyone is talking about this aid that no doubt is going to go to Gaza. Where's that money really going to go? Is that money really going to go to the people of Gaza? Or is it going to line the pockets of the bad guys, namely Hamas? Because oftentimes that money does line the pockets of Hamas. That's why people have been saying for quite some time now, if we're going to give aid to Gaza, make sure that there is a mechanism to ensure that it makes it to the people of Gaza and not the soldiers, the terrorists of Hamas. Oh, there's more. She had a lot more to say about Israel and a number of other issues. We'll talk about that straight ahead. The phone number is 866-90-RED-I, 866-907-3339. This is Dan Mandis on Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. As the seasons change, so does truck maintenance. Cold weather can affect everything from your batteries and your air brake system to tire inflation and fuel lines. Make sure your tires are ready to roll through winter with the following maintenance tip. Underinflation is a leading cause of tire failures during winter because when the temperature drops, so does your tire pressure. Check your tire pressure before every trip to ensure they're properly inflated and to get the best footprint and traction on the roads. Conduct daily visual tire inspections to make sure you haven't picked up harmful debris on the road. Find a trustworthy tire service provider today so you'll be ready as the seasons change.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here, in for Gary and Eric, talking about the screeching Rashida Tlaib and her performance in Washington, D.C. to a crowd. You know, she's on this really bad sound system, and she's screaming a lot of, anti-U.S. rhetoric, I would say. And she's talking about the poor people of Gaza. And I do understand that. I do understand that there is a massive humanitarian crisis that is going on right now. But, one of the things that I would ask, and I've listened to a lot of Rashida Tlaib, and not once have I heard her actually condemn Hamas. I mean, she's screaming about America and how America treats the Palestinians. But wasn't it Hamas who prevented them from evacuating to the south? Yes, it was. And why is it that Rashida Tlaib and others are calling out America, but not calling out Jordan and Egypt and other Arab nations who seemingly could give two craps about the people in Palestine or the people in Gaza? They won't take refugees. I mean, heck, Egypt finally is letting aid through their border with Gaza. Finally. So there's a lot of these other nations there in the Middle East that could help the people of Gaza and take in some of these refugees and so forth, but they don't. And so while Rashida Tlaib and others are screaming about America's treatment of the people in Gaza and America's treatment of the Palestinians, we give them a lot of aid. We give them a lot of opportunity. Yet somehow it's America that's bad. I'm going to get into some of those numbers straight ahead. I do want to get to this final soundbite from Rashida Tlaib.
Continue to watch people think it's okay to bomb a hospital where children... You know what's so hard sometimes is watching those videos and the people telling the kids don't cry.
Right.
I'm like, let them cry.
So, I mean, look, first of all, this was earlier today. And by the time last night, I was on the air and the first thing I said coming out of, the first segment of the show last night, my opening monologue was all about how there was a lot of question as to what or who bombed that hospital. Hamas was pointing the finger at Israel. Israel was saying, hold on now, let's look at the evidence. And by the end of the night, it was, with all of the evidence that had come out, it was clear that it was not Israel that bombed that hospital. Yet Rashida Tlaib earlier today was still perpetuating that lie, that it was Israel that bombed that hospital, when everybody knows that it was not Israel that bombed that hospital. And so she's going on. And by the way, they also don't know, just to start things off, we don't know how many people were killed. Last night, the story was that 500 people were killed in that hospital that was bombed by this offshoot of or partner of Hamas. However, we don't now know how many people were killed. Wasn't 500, maybe a few hundred, but we still don't know. But we'll keep you updated on that story as it continues to develop. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So part of the news today, apparently Joe Biden is getting ready to ask for at least $100 billion for global wars, and it's going to, we don't know the details yet. Apparently they're drafting this, but it's going to go to Israel, Ukraine, and apparently some money is also going to go to Taiwan. Of course, we don't know what China is going to do, but they're always threatening Taiwan. But from what I can tell, and from some of the reading that I've done, apparently the money that's going to go to Israel, it's a very small amount in comparison to this money that's going to go to Ukraine. So that's what the Biden administration is going to try to do, is they're going to throw in some funding for Israel, but it's going to be tied to a lot more money for Ukraine, because they know that the funding for Ukraine, billions and billions of dollars in funding for Ukraine, unaccountable money going to Ukraine, they know that there's a very good chance that that wouldn't make it standalone as it would try to make its way through Congress. The funding would make its way through Congress. They understand that there's a lot of Republicans, maybe some Democrats as well, that would not support that funding for Ukraine, because we've already given them so much money. We already know from those leaked Pentagon papers that there's a lot of folks within the Pentagon who are questioning the leadership of Vladimir Zelensky. They also already know that the American people are stunned and sickened by the amount of money that we have given to Ukraine that is unaccountable. And as I've said many, many times, it's like we give them just enough not to lose, and we don't give them enough to win. In other words, the gravy train for Vladimir Zelensky just keeps going. And then the question is, okay, well, where the hell is all that money going? Because it clearly is unaccountable. It's clear that there really is no real strategy for Ukraine. And a blank check is not a strategy. I can't tell you how many Congress people and senators I have interviewed, and defense experts and intelligence experts that I've interviewed during my morning show in Nashville, Tennessee, and they all, by and large, do say the same thing. A blank check for Ukraine is not a strategy. And I think myself, like for a lot of Americans, when this whole thing started, we all recognized that the reason why Vladimir Putin was emboldened to go into Ukraine was because of the failed pullout of Afghanistan and the weakness of Joe Biden. But I did understand the need to support Ukraine. But now billions and billions and billions of unaccountable dollars later, people are becoming a heck of a lot more cynical on the whole situation. And so now what the Biden administration and what these folks in Congress want to do is they want to tie that Ukraine funding to Israel. Apparently Israel is asking for $10 billion, and so that leaves another 90 for Ukraine and other efforts as well. Do you believe, let me ask you this. Do you believe that $60 or $70 billion in Ukraine funding would ever make it through Congress on its own? No. That's why they're going to tie it to Israel. Now, realize that we've already given Ukraine $113 billion in just financial aid. There's all kinds of other avenues that we've been giving them financing as well. And now we're going to throw down another $70 billion or so. We'll have to see what the what the final number is, but you're talking about Taiwan as well. So we really don't know what the breakdown is. But just as a matter of perspective, we typically give Israel somewhere around $3.8 billion a year. They've asked for another 10. And I would say that that is most certainly money well spent. And now we've got the $100 million that we're going to be giving to Gaza and the people of Gaza. And what I was saying before is absolutely true. Because there is so much evidence that a lot of this aid ultimately does end up in the hands of Hamas. And so how do we, speaking of unaccountable foreign aid, how do we ensure that that money doesn't go to Hamas, who will then use that money to buy rockets and guns to attack Israel? One of the things, and I'm going to be able to get into this in the next hour, one of the things that Joe Biden said in Israel, and can I just tell you that he was embarrassing on the world stage. Tail end of the show yesterday, we had the audio after the president landed in Tel Aviv, and oh my Lord, he just sounded awful. I've got some of that audio coming up, but the big question is, with this $100 million to the people of Gaza for this foreign aid, okay, well then how do we ensure that that money is going to be well spent and not going to towards corruption? It's a very big question, and it's a legitimate question as well. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. This is it Zion calling from Maine on Red Eye Radio?
Yes, thank you for having my call. I just wanted to bring up a point. So all these Republicans have wanted to not give money to Ukraine, which is a smart decision. So why all of a sudden should Israel be getting money? What is the difference? Shouldn't we be, instead of giving foreign aid, maybe giving domestic aid? We know there's a lot of crime. Maybe revamp our police force?
So my answer to that question, I don't know what the people in Congress would say, but my answer to that is that Israel is one of our longest allies in the Middle East, the only democracy, and they have our enemies that are attacking them. And so that's why the foreign aid to Israel, at least in my opinion, is justified. For Ukraine, that just feels like a never-ending black hole of foreign aid. Also realize that with Israel, we know exactly where that money is going. And please understand, I'm not saying that, all nations have their corruption. Israel has its own forms of corruption. But we also know that, for example, we do fund the Iron Dome, which is what Israel uses to blow out those rockets as they are coming in. So we know, by and large, where that money is going. And it's not a massive amount of money, generally speaking. I just told you the numbers. I think, is it $3.8 billion a year is what we give Israel. To compare that to the $113 billion that we've given Ukraine over the last couple of years, it's very small in comparison. So to wrap it up, Zion, what I would say is we know specifically where that money is going in Israel, by and large. We also know that they're using it well. We do know that they absolutely need that money as well. And they're, again, our longest ally, one of our longest allies, and they're the only democracy in the Middle East. And so to me, it's justified.
Yeah, I understand your side of the thing, but, this is going to turn into a regional war. Should we also be funding that too? Should we be taking care of all these refugees from the war that we're funding?
Well, we're not taking care of, we're not allowing refugees so far to come into our country. And you're right, this is going to turn into a regional war. And I get it. And one of the things that we need to do, we can't make the mistakes that we made in Ukraine and continue to make in Ukraine with Israel. With Ukraine, as I said in my monologue, we give them just enough money not to lose and not enough money to win. With Israel, I think it's a worthy investment because I believe that Israel can win even in a regional war, even with Iran and even with, all of these other nations that are the enemies of Israel, pointing their rockets at Israel. I still think that it's money well spent. Now, to your point, Zion, and it is a fair point, if this becomes an even bigger war, like is in a World War III, you're going to have China, you're going to have Russia, of course you're going to have Iran, you throw North Korea in there as well, and that, of course, becomes a far bigger discussion. But right now, for me, I believe that with Israel being our longest running ally, of course, in the Middle East as well, a very strong ally, I think that it is money well spent, and I do appreciate the call. 866-90 Red Eye, and this is John in Lebanon, Tennessee on Red Eye Radio. Hey, John, how are you?
Hey, doing fine. Just calling in about that Congresswoman, Rashida needs to leave.
Wait. Did you call her Rashida? Did you call her Rashida need to leave?
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm going to steal that. Yep, I'm totally going to steal that.
You go right ahead. Hey, yeah, no, and hey, I heard you over talking about the money as well. That's a good talking point too. We need to stop sending these blank checks out because ultimately that debt falls on our grandchildren, and we're just feeding the problem. Like you said, we give them enough money, to keep them afloat, but don't give them enough money to win. We need to stop feeding the beast is what we need to do. But as far as that Rashida needs to leave, she's sitting there, spitting her anti-American hate speech, and it seems to me like that I feel like there should be a law in place, if it isn't already, about people like that sitting in a position of power, let alone one of our representatives, and being able to talk like that in public about our country, which she represents. It's not right. It's so far away from our Judeo-Judicial values in this country and everything we were founded on. Like, right. and if you ask me personally, she seems like kind of like she might be a terrorist, so to speak. Because
well, here's John. Here's what I would say. We have the First Amendment in this country, and just like the Second Amendment and just like all the amendments, these amendments in our Constitution is what our country was founded on. So that's number one. Number two, one of the reasons why I love the First Amendment, right to free speech, is because it really enables us to be able to distinguish who the real idiots are. And with Rashida Tlaib, it is clear that, at least to me, she is an absolute idiot. And so, one of the things that, even though she is a sitting member of Congress, she does have her right to free speech, as ill-conceived and wrong-headed as it is. The thing that really bothers me is the fact that she is blatantly lying about that attack on that hospital. She's still out there, even though there's so much evidence, and I presented a lot of it to you last night, so I don't necessarily feel the need to go through it again. But, we've got the phone call from those two bad guys, the Hamas members, I believe, who were going back and forth. And I aired the audio for you yesterday where they're talking back and forth about, what, the rocket failed and, it shanked and hit the hospital. And so they were literally talking about that. Also, you have the radar evidence, the video evidence as well, that those rockets were coming from inside Gaza as opposed to coming from Israel into Gaza. So she's lying. And for that, I believe that she should be, I don't know what you can do. I don't know if Congress can, somehow condemn her, sanction her, whatever. I don't know what they can do to punish Rashida Tlaib. But here's the thing. It is her right to let the rest of the world know how wrong she is. 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye. That is where we find Daniel, calling from Alabama. Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. But let me tell you, Dan, no more money. No more money to these people. We are $32 trillion in debt, and here we are throwing more money that is totally unaccounted for. I can't believe that you would say we're not giving Ukraine enough money to win the war. We're never going to win that war, Dan. And you know
whoa, hold on. I'm not saying that we need to give Ukraine more money. You're misconstruing what I said. First of all, you're wrong. We're not $32 trillion in debt. We're $33 trillion in debt. My point being that we're just doing enough with Ukraine to keep Zelensky's gravy train going. In other words, we either got to be all in or we got to be completely out. Now, if we were going to go all in, we should have done it earlier. In other words, Russia has made such inroads into Ukraine that there really is, at this point, no way for us to, or for Ukraine to win this war. And with Zelensky, who refuses to negotiate, I'm all for just cutting off the spigot. So I want to make sure that you don't misconstrue or misunderstand or mishear what I said, because let me tell you something, friend. I am all about stopping funding for Ukraine and giving more to Israel. Thanks for the call.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. You can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Dan Mandis Show. I'm on Instagram, too. There is so much going on, and I, by the way, do host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can listen to that 6 to 10 Eastern, 99.7WTN.com. Joe Biden, I got to tell you, one of the things that the president said last night was that the world was watching. Can I just say that the president was less than impressive on the world stage? Now, this was during, I think it was the final 30 minutes of the radio broadcast last night here on Red Eye Radio, where the president was in Israel, and there was a lot going on. The world was watching. And the president, in his discussions with the leaders of Israel, including Benjamin Netanyahu, it appeared that he forgot a line.
You know, years ago, I asked the Secretary of State when he and I were working in the Senate to write something for him, and he said he wrote a line that I think is appropriate. He said, "It's not we lead, not just." Well, I won't go into it. I'll wait later. Taking too much time. But the point is this.
No, Joe, you forgot the line.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the
back on script.
Explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday.
So that was not a real good moment for the president. And, you know, he sounded, as we said yesterday, he sounded very tired, and he just was not doing well. But he also said a few things that didn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. For example, and this is something that a lot of folks picked up on, when he referred to Hamas as the other team.
And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
Rocket attack.
But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, and I believe that I mentioned this last night, was when he said that, I was incredibly offended. And the reason why I was offended as a staunch defender of Israel is because the president is basically saying, well, we have to convince all of these other nations that it was not Israel. You know, because the president said, well, it's, clearly not Israel. It's not you guys. It, seems like it was, quote unquote, the other team. But there's a lot of folks that remain unconvinced. And the point is that you'll never convince the Arab nation that that was not Israel. I mean, even Rashida Tlaib, in the first hour, I was playing audio for you of Rashida Tlaib, a sitting member of Congress, who is still perpetuating that lie. Do you really think the Arab nation who is out there burning our embassies to the ground? You really think that they're going to be convinced that it wasn't Israel? I mean, you could look them square in the eye. You could present them all the facts in the world, and it wouldn't matter to them. It simply would not matter to them. Because in their mind, Israel is, along with America, the great Satan, the great evil. So for Biden to even acknowledge that there's some folks out there that don't believe that it was Hamas, that did believe that it was Israel, and that, basically saying that we have some work to do in convincing them. Here's the deal. My message to Joe Biden, I hope you're listening. I know you're not, but I wouldn't lift a finger to try and convince these other nations, these Arab nations, or Rashida Tlaib, that it was not Israel, because they're unconvincible. So why even bother to try to reason or present facts to them when they don't want to hear the truth? It's not that they can't handle the truth. They can't see the truth because they're blinded by their hate for Israel and America, including Rashida Tlaib. So I found that absolutely offensive. And I don't know if Benjamin Netanyahu found that as offensive as I did. Probably not. He's out there saying that he felt like it was a great trip. Now, realize Benjamin Netanyahu is going to say what he needs to say after Joe Biden's trip, because he has asked Joe Biden and American taxpayers, for billions of dollars to support this effort to ward off, this war that is broken out between Hamas and Israel after Hamas attacked Israel. It's a terrorist attack, as everyone knows. And, of course, again, Biden just bizarrely referring to Hamas as the other team. He continued, by the way, the president did. He continued to ask for help from the American people for the people of Palestine.
And also means encouraging life-saving capacity to help the Palestinians who are innocent, caught in the middle of this.
Palestinians.
And, well, at any rate, that's who we are. Not just me, but that's who the United States is. And it's just not the example of our power, it's the power of our example. It's almost as important. The world's looking.
Yeah, so the world was looking, and the world, I would be willing to bet, was unimpressed with Joe Biden. You heard him talk about how, we need to support the Palestinian people, so on and so forth. He has taken great effort to say that Hamas is separate from the Palestinian people, the people of Gaza. He keeps saying that. And I think part of what he is trying to do is he's trying to, in his own way, put some pressure on Israel to not go in, not have the 400,000 ground troops go into Gaza to try and root out Hamas. That's, I think, the president's way of trying to discourage that. But I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, he's going to do what he's going to do. But that whole 2-minute speech was slow. It was halting. It was tired. And I don't think that the president did well. And I think that one of the things that he wanted to do was he wanted to have a talking point. He wanted to be able to say that, he visited Israel, during a time of war and so on and so forth. I mean, this is what Biden does. Well, you may have visited Israel, but what did you contribute? I don't believe that the president contributed a whole heck of a lot. In the previous hour, we were talking about the $100 million that is, in foreign aid, this humanitarian aid that's going to go to the people of Gaza. And as many people have pointed out, including me, okay, so how are you going to make sure that that doesn't end up in the hands of Hamas? Because historically speaking, that is exactly what happens with this foreign aid. By the way, and then there was some more audio that came out. This came out yesterday, Wednesday. And this audio came out. It was President Biden, and he's on Air Force One. A lot of people are talking about this. And I think the reason why people are talking about it is just because the president, again, who says that he is perfectly fine to run another 4 years, this is what the president sounded like.
Virtually every mass shooting, every circumstance where a large number of people have been victimized and lost, I've spoken with them. I learned a long time ago what you've all learned in your life.
And, you know, he's very slow, very halting.
When someone's going through something.
And there's long pauses. And it's clear that he's barely there. And so, this whole audio bite is 1:39 seconds long, and it's just him essentially making no sense. And you can barely hear him, not because of the sound of Air Force One. You can barely hear him because he's mumbling. And this is a president that believes that he can go another 4 years. And I'm sorry, but there's just no way. So America's best foot has not been put forward with Joe Biden. And so, to be honest, the more that he puts himself out there on the world stage, the worse that he looks and the worse America looks. By the way, if you want to see that whole video, I'm going to spare you. You can thank me later. I'm not going to play the entire 1:39 of Joe Biden mumbling his way through whatever the heck he was trying to say on Air Force One. But just suffice to say that the president, once again, on the world stage, not looking real good. I want to say hello to Mike, calling from Nashville, here on Red Eye Radio. Mike, thanks for calling in.
Yeah, man. Yeah, great. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's time for him to kind of retire. But, you know, what you're saying about Hamas getting this money is absolutely correct. If it needs to put any money forward, it would be trying to rebuild the hospital. But that, basically, I was talking about when I called in about racism, about the hate crimes.
Yes.
That this girl, Rashida Tlaib, has been committing, trying to subvert the country, especially young people, into hating the country, which usually turns into criminal activity, riots, killings, things like that.
Well, think about it this way, Mike, and I appreciate the call. Your cell phone's cutting out, so I got to cut it short. But, you know, one of the things, and I was going to mention this later on in the broadcast, but you had Rashida Tlaib, and she was out there with her, you know, and if you missed the first hour, I played audio of Rashida Tlaib, congresswoman, and she is clearly anti-Semitic, clearly anti-Israel, and she's out there screaming about how Israel bombed that hospital. That is demonstrably untrue. But here's the thing, is that after that, you know, the same day in Washington, D.C., you had a lot of these people, you know what they did? They stormed the Capitol. So the question would then have to be asked, okay, so Rashida Tlaib, all of this anti-American sentiment, all of this anti-Israel sentiment, and then apparently a lot of these people that were listening to her, as the story goes, rushed into the Capitol building. And so then they had to arrest a whole bunch of folks, and, you know, they wouldn't leave. It turned really ugly, and that's part of the news cycle today with all these people that ran into the Capitol. They sat down, they started chanting and all that other stuff. And so, you know, the question is, okay, well, then who's gonna bring up, you know, Rashida Tlaib on, you know, some kind of charges like inciting an insurrection? Are those people who went into the Capitol and they sat down and they started to, you know, chant and protest and they wouldn't leave? You know, are they going to be arrested? Are they going to be, you know, thrown in jail for, you know, months and years on end and, you know, not being told what they're being charged with, being kept in horrible conditions? Is that going to happen to them? No, probably not. All right, I'm just asking a question. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. 866-907-3339. This is Dan Mandis on Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. Costs are not the same each month. If 9,600 miles are driven one month and 10,000 miles the next, two different sets of costs apply for each month. For example, if your tractor payment is $1,850 per month and you drive 9,600 miles in the month, your tractor payment is costing you 19.3 cents per mile. Drive 10,000 miles, though, and that same payment will cost you 18.5 cents per mile. This is one of your major fixed costs while paying off a truck loan. The difference in this example is only a fraction of a cent, which may seem like small change, but it ultimately amounts to $960 more annually on the bottom line. Because though fixed costs do not go down over time, you can reduce your cost per mile with more paid miles. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. By the way, coming up after the bottom of the hour break, the media and how they reported this rocket attack on this hospital, they are now being called out, as they should. And I'm going to read to you and let you listen to some of the worst instigators as far as the false story, the fake news, as Donald Trump always says, fake news, about how many in the media reported early on that the hospital was blown up by Israel, and how so many in the media literally simply accepted the Hamas story, the Palestinians Authority, and their story that it was Israel, as opposed to what ultimately now we know that it was this offshoot of Hamas. Right now, though, I want to say hello to Matt in Michigan on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how you doing, Dan? Thanks for taking my call.
You bet. Go ahead.
Hey, I was thinking to myself, if I was president, I would call every leader of every nation and ask them one question. If, and I hate to say this, but if you had to eliminate one or the other, would it be Israel or Hamas?
Well, I think we already know that if you're asking like, Jordan, you're asking, Gaza, you're asking, most of these Arab nations, they're going to say that they would want Israel eliminated. And the
Yes.
Western nations, the Western nations would all say that they would want Hamas eliminated. I think that, sadly, we give aid, and this goes right back to the, what we were talking about the last couple of nights, where, we give aid to the enemies of our friends, right? We do help Hamas. I've documented that in this program and the last couple of nights. We have been helping fund Hamas. The Biden administration does. And, of course, we all know that Biden helped fund Iran. Donald Trump had basically his boots on the neck of Iran, and they were hurting. And then Joe Biden takes over, and he opened up the oil gates, the floodgates of oil from Iran, looking the other way on these sanctions. And that allows Iran to, bring in tens of billions of dollars, and that money is funneled into Hamas, and then Hamas attacks Israel. I mean, you're right. I mean, the problem with the Biden administration is, on the one hand, they go and they hug Bibi Netanyahu, and then Biden stabs him right in the back with this, blood money to Iran.
I totally agree, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth in. It's not a question I wanted to ask. I just think it's the only question left.
All right. Well, I thank you very much for the call. Matt calling from Michigan, and this is Steve calling from Arizona on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Steve, how are you, man?
Doing pretty good. I was just talking to the screener, and he made a good point, that because I was saying that should something like giving all that money to Ukraine or to Gaza should be voted on. And your screener said, should we vote? You mean us or the Congress? And I said, somebody, I don't think Biden should just be able to just hand over. And I thought he said something like $100 billion. Is that right, or was it $100 million?
There's two things going on, and let me explain it to you. I'm gonna have to put you on hold. I'm coming up to the break, but there's two different stories out there. Number one is $100 million is going to humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. So that's $100 million. The question is, will that money actually go to the people in the Gaza Strip, or will that money go to Hamas? Because historically, Hamas gets that money. That's number one. Number two, $100 billion aid package is being drafted, my friend, as we speak. And I'll give the details on that straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. This is such a weird story. This is top of the Daily Mail, and it's a photograph. Well, this is the headline. Harvard students hold die-in, D-I-E, die-in, and massive protests in support of Palestine just 12 days after their letter, of course you all know, the letter condemning Israel sparked outrage. And so I guess what they're doing, I'm looking at this picture, and, they're all like, I guess what they're trying to do is they're laying on the ground and pretending they're dead. Is that what they're doing? I mean, I guess these people are so weird. I don't understand it. Apparently, this is how the story reads. I just opened this up, so I'm trying to make heads or tails out of it. Harvard pro-Palestinian groups held a die-in on Wednesday, just a week after the deadly terrorist attack by Hamas that killed more than 1,400 people in Israel. They say the Harvard Palestine Solidarity Committee and Harvard graduate students for Palestine organized Wednesday's march from Harvard's main campus in Cambridge to its business school in Boston. According to the invitation, the march was organized in part due to, they say, an Israeli airstrike on an hospital in Gaza, despite the U.S. intel clarifying that Israel was reportedly not behind the explosion. You know, it is. We're talking earlier about the freedom of speech here in this country, and one of the things that I said was freedom of speech gives everyone the opportunity to show everyone else how dumb they are, how irrational they are. And this is another perfect examples. Videos from the event show dozens of protesters filling the streets alongside the Charles River, with many waving Palestinian flags, chanting slogans like "No justice, no peace," and holding signs saying "Stop the genocide in Gaza." You know what I've noticed? I've noticed this word genocide is being used when it comes to Israel defending itself. But you'll notice that if it's Hamas terrorists killing, hundreds or well over 1,000 Israelis, Jewish folks, they're freedom fighters, right? They're not terrorists. It's not genocide. They're freedom fighters, and they're trying to, defeat the oppressors. It's just crazy. And I think part of what is so frustrating for someone like me, because I deal in truth, and I think this is, and then I'm going to move on, but, when you look at what the truth is, and when you look at the fact that here in this country, there is an absolute battle going on in this country as, you have one side of the aisle, you have one major political party, the Democrats, and they are perpetually telling lies. They are perpetually saying that something is true when it is clearly not. There is a battle, a war over what is the truth in this country. And it's always these folks on the left that are bastardizing the truth. And these are the same people, by the way, that said for 4 years that everything that Donald Trump said was a lie. When in reality, it's their side that is telling far, far more lies than Donald Trump ever did. And let's face it, the media told far more lies about Donald Trump than Donald Trump ever told himself. And it started on day one of Donald Trump's presidency, when you had the media breathlessly reporting that the president had the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. removed from the Oval Office when he actually did not. And that really set the tone for the 4 years that Donald Trump was in the White House. So as a guy who, really does live in the truth, I talk about the truth. I talk about what is going on in this country. And let me tell you something, friends. In this country, the truth hurts. And so it is so incredibly infuriating when I see these activist, leftist organizations, these progressive organizations, and people like Rashida Tlaib out there still saying that hospital was attacked by Israel, when there is so much evidence to the contrary. And yet they still go on with their narrative. And so I guess the question I'm going to have, that these Harvard students, out there doing this silly little die-in, okay, whatever. But it's based on a lie. And again, I'm going to say it is always these folks on the left. You want some more examples? Joe Biden. Joe Biden, every time I turn around, I hear Joe Biden talking about the reason why he decided to run for president back in 2020. And he says it was a battle for the soul of our nation. And the reason why it was a battle for the soul of our nation is because Joe Biden's contention is that Donald Trump said that white supremacists were good people after Charlottesville. And he continues to talk about that lie. He continues to purport that that's what Donald Trump said, when even the Washington Post says that comment has been taken completely out of context, and that is absolutely not what Donald Trump said. So Joe Biden's entire presidency is based on a lie. How about the lie that the border is secure? Obviously another lie. In other words, the Democrats and the progressives, I mean, if I really thought about it, heck, I could open up the phone lines right now. What is your favorite Democrat lie? Because there's so many out there. And there are truths that they refuse to acknowledge. The truth that their policies have led to rampant crime in cities run by Democrats. And their soft on crime policies, their bail reform policies, their George Soros funded DAs, all of those things lead to rampant crime. Yet they will refuse to acknowledge it. Their defund the police movement led to rampant crime, led to shortage of police officers across the country. And what did that do? That, again, led to more crime. And the big lie there with the Democrats is their refusal to acknowledge the absolute truth and the obvious truth. I mean, there's so many things. Here's the other one. Here's another one. My listeners in Nashville know that I absolutely obsess over this. When the Border Patrol was accused of using whips on those Haitian refugees, those Haitian migrants, when that never happened. Remember that whole story where you had the Border Patrol, they were on the horses, and a photographer, a reporter, took photographs, and the photographs were taken, and the photos looked like the Border Patrol was whipping these Haitians. But that's not what was happening. The guy even said that's not what was happening, that the photographs were taken out of context. But the Biden administration still, and the Democrats still say that the Border Patrol whipped those Haitians. They even took away their ability to utilize horses. And so for the Democrats, it's like there's so many different types of lies that the Democrats will say. There's the outright lies, like the border is secure. And then there's the lies that apparently now a lot of these folks are going to continue to talk about, where the Israelis bombed that hospital. And then there's the lie, I would say, that is a form of a lie, and that would be the failure to acknowledge the truth. And the obvious truth, and that would be the things that I just mentioned, which is the failure to acknowledge that their policies, their soft on crime policies, has led to massive, rampant crime in the streets. So I would say, yeah, that's a form of a lie, the failure to acknowledge the truth. Oh, here's another one from the left. And also there are some Republicans that were guilty of this as well, the anti-Trump movement, basically, about the laptop from hell. And the media involved in these lies as well, when they say, oh, well, the laptop from hell, it was nothing but Russian disinformation. That was a lie. And that was a lie that was told by those 51 intelligence officials from, they say, both sides of the aisle, used to discredit the Hunter Biden laptop, which ultimately led to what I would say is a stolen election. Because if you look at the polling that came out after that whole thing happened and Joe Biden was elected president, what did millions of Americans say? They said that if they knew that the laptop from hell was actually credible, they would not have voted for Joe Biden. There's a great piece out there that I'm going to share with you probably in the next hour from Molly Hemingway. Can the intelligence agencies ever be trusted again after what happened with the laptop from hell? And the people that signed that letter that gave Joe Biden cover, they are unrepentant. People like Leon Panetta, John Brennan. They refuse to apologize for lying to the American people. Just like CNN, just like MSNBC, and all those other outlets, including the networks, who for months, if not years, said the laptop from hell was nothing but Russian disinformation. It was credible. They finally admitted it after Joe Biden was elected president. You want to talk about the great lie. They talk about Donald Trump and the great lie of, quote unquote, the stolen election and all those things. I could do this. I'm not going to, but I could, this entire 5-hour broadcast, I could document lie after lie after lie that the Democrats have told. And now this is going to be another one that they're going to continue to tell, that the Israelis bombed that hospital because it fits with their narrative. And oftentimes their narrative is completely opposite from what the truth actually is. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. This is Dan Mandis on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Guy found me on on social media sent me a private message saying, well, the hospital wasn't even hit right out there in Gaza. I even reported you folks yesterday. I think we're arguing over semantics, because I reported to you even last night that there's some question as to whether it hit the hospital directly or did it hit the parking lot next to the hospital. But you can't deny that there was significant damage to the hospital. And the bigger point is that Israel is being blamed for it when clearly the evidence shows otherwise. And also, just for the record, as I pointed out in the first hour here on Red Eye Radio, they're also saying now that was not 500 people killed. They don't know how many were killed, but they're saying it certainly was not 500. This is Anthony on Long Island in New York. Anthony, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio.
Oh, thank you. You're amazing. I listened to you last night with your line of questioning with Richard, and it was outstanding. The lies started on December 28th when Barack Obama shuttered two embassies, one on the Potomac and one in Glen Cove, Long Island. He gave the dignitaries 24 hours to evacuate both embassies and shuttered them. That was Russia began right from the Oval Office. The other hoax would be Jussie Smollett running around with MAGA hats on, saying with a noose around his neck, saying he got hung. That's another thing. They don't know what a woman is. That's another lie. I mean, it blows my mind the dysfunction and the just utter disrespect for the politician. I mean, the electorate to tell us if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And then you have that guy Richard last night who was saying.
Well, let me do this, Jerry. I've got to move on. End of the hour, but you're on to a really important point, because these politicians think that the American people are dumb enough to fall for their lies when we actually know the truth.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. You can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. I'm also on Instagram. Definitely follow me on Twitter, at Dan Mandis Show. I did just tweet out that story that I mentioned in the previous hour where these Harvard students, they're now, there's something offensive. I don't think I'm going to be able to get over this. So the Harvard students, and if you're just joining us for this hour, beginning in this hour, these Harvard students, and you can, again, find the story on my Twitter page, at Dan Mandis Show, but they're holding a die-in in Massachusetts. Does anybody else find it incredibly offensive that these more than likely rich and privileged Harvard students are holding this, silly little die-in when people are really dying in Gaza, when people are really dying in Israel? And these folks are holding their die-in, protesting the bombing of that hospital in Gaza, and they're still perpetuating this lie that Israel is, the one that did it, when we know that it was not Israel. It was the Islamic Jihad, a group very much like and probably a partner of Hamas. By the way, the very latest, the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, launching huge bombing campaign against Hezbollah military targets along its northern border with Lebanon after the terror group, of course financed by Iran, fired anti-tank and rounds into Israel. So there's a lot of news that's going on out there this morning again, and appreciate you listening to Red Eye Radio. And again, the phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. I really like this article from Molly Hemingway. And she is one of my favorites. And one of the things that she has always talked about is this 51 various intelligence agency officials who came out, of course, as you all know, and they said that the laptop from hell was Russian disinformation. And you remember the moment. I don't have the soundbite in front of me right now, but you remember the moment. And especially the people that listen to me all the time in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, where I host a morning show, 6 to 10 Eastern, where, Joe Biden said what Donald Trump is accusing me of is, complete garbage. 51 intelligence agency experts, officials from both sides of the aisle say this is, Russian disinformation. And that letter that was signed by those 51, as you probably know, perhaps know, it was created purposely for the reason of giving Joe Biden something to say during the debate. It was, created to give Joe Biden some cover. Well, this is from Real Clear Politics. Leon Panetta is one of them. You got John Brennan, just a whole bunch of folks in the intelligence sphere who, put their name to this piece of paper. This is from Real Clear Politics. The Federalist Molly Hemingway reacted to Leon Panetta refusing to acknowledge the Hunter Biden laptop is real and to apologize for adding his signature to the letter signed by another over 50 intelligence officials declaring the Hunter Biden laptop to be inauthentic and Russian propaganda. When the New York Post broke the news about this Hunter Biden laptop and what it showed about the Biden family business, it was squashed by these 50 former intel agents falsely asserting that it was Russian disinformation, Hemingway wrote. So we were actually the victim of a disinformation operation run by these people. And they refused to accept any kind of accountability. She continues to write, it's like shocking and appalling that this man who had a position of trust, Leon Panetta, would express no regret about participating in a disinformation operation. And this is in the context, of course, of the other disinformation operations that those same people ran of falsely alerting Donald Trump had stole the 2016 election by colluding with Russia, she says, and it's true. It's a horrible thing that people cannot trust intelligence agencies, and it's because not only of these actions, but their refusal to repent or apologize. Well, they're not, I would say to Molly Hemingway, they're not going to repent or apologize. Because you know what it's like? It's not like this was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a lie. And it's just like, when people say, wow, the Biden administration, they're so incompetent on the border. They're not incompetent. They're purposely leaving the border open. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're trying to import an entire new block of voters eventually when they provide them all with, amnesty and the ability to vote. It's a whole new block of voters that they believe will be voting Democrat. So these aren't, as far as the border goes, I mean, it's not it's a lie when they say the border is secure, but, they're lying to the American people. But in reality, they're trying to create this opportunity so that they can ensure that they will be able to stay in power for, decades to come. I mean, that's what it's all about. But we wrapped up the last hour, and the guy had called in, and we were talking about, I did this whole thing about, the Democrats and the media and lies and all of this other stuff. And it's not only the fact that they're lying, but also the fact that they believe that the American people are dumb enough to fall for it. They believe that the American people are dumb enough to fall for the lies, and they're unrepentant, and they do it constantly. one of the other things that I believe is a lie out there, and then I'll get to some of your calls. But one of the other things that is out there is, Donald Trump has said, obviously many times, he'll say, well, the election of 2016 was stolen. 2020 was stolen. And people will say, oh my gosh, he's lying about that. They call it the big lie. Well, I mean, I can very easily, and I've done it many, many times, said that the election was stolen, and it has nothing to do, and please don't call about ballot boxes and ballot machines and all that, because what I will say is the election of 2020 was stolen by the way that the Democrats, they politicized COVID. And they changed election laws around the country, and they did it unconstitutionally. Because they changed the voting laws by not going through the state legislatures, but, you had some of these attorneys general and election officials and so forth. They were the ones that changed the voting laws and not the state legislatures in many cases. That's number one. Number two, again, the laptop from hell. That is another one where that was a lie, and they used that to manipulate the election. So, I mean, I could do this all day. I'm not going to bother because it's, to me, water under the bridge now. But you know what? You want to talk about the great lie, I will talk about the laptop from hell. To me, that is the great lie. It is so ironic, too, because you have people on the left, and they'll sit here and they'll talk about, and they'll talk about it incessantly about how, Donald Trump and his supporters, they're all a bunch of Nazis, and Donald Trump is Hitler, and all this stuff. And they have this sort of holier-than-thou mentality on their side as the great arbiters of truth. And this is the same for the mainstream media, the great arbiters of truth. But the reality is that they are perpetuating far more lies than Donald Trump and conservatives ever have. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. This is Jerry, and he's calling from Iowa on Red Eye Radio. Jerry, how are you?
Hey, Dan, I really like it when you're on, and I certainly love the guys. So I'd like to chime in with my favorite Democrat lie. And for me, it goes back to really the 1960s. There's a book called The Social Construction of Reality. And basically it says that there is no one central truth, that everybody gets to have their own reality. And to me, that's where all the lies come from, because if you feel like it's true, then it must be true. And so they just it's situation ethics. And there was a book in the 60s. It invaded American universities. It was called The Social Construction of Reality by Berger and Luckman. And they just said that if you want to make something up and make it true, then you just have to persuade enough people. And so this is a Democrat reality. They don't think that there's one natural law, one truth that we all have to discover. It's just that they can just say anything, and it's real. It's not Judeo-Christian like Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the reality. They feel like you and I would say that there are multiple perspectives.
Yes.
But they don't say that there are multiple perspectives. And so that's my favorite lie, because that's the one that gives birth to all the other strange weirdo garbage that they just pull out of their hat all the time.
Well, Jerry, whenever somebody says, you must honor my truth, that always gets my my blood boiling, because okay, but what if your truth is the complete polar opposite of the truth? And we see that all the time, with the whole conversation about what is a woman. I mean, a man can say, well, my truth is that I'm a woman. Okay, well, that might be your truth, but the reality is that you've got boy parts. And so you can try and convince other people that you're a woman, but you might want to take a look south. Anyway, Jerry, thank you very much for the call. I very much appreciate it. This is Rex in Valencia, California. Rex, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio.
Yes, thank you. I think that the Republicans should take the 22 that couldn't support Jim Jordan and the Republican Conservative Caucus, or whatever they call themselves, and write down 10 names of people they could support and see if there's somebody they could concur with.
Yeah, you know what, Rex, I appreciate the call. I think that whole thing is a complete train wreck. I think they're supposed to. I haven't even really covered that today because there's so many other things going on. I covered it extensively yesterday. Jim Jordan failed, I believe, Rex, today. He failed in a second vote, and I think, are they going to try to have another vote on Thursday? Rex, do you know if that's the latest on that story?
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
All right, I'll find out. If you listened last night, I'm a big Jim Jordan supporter. We have the moderates who now 2 times. You have the moderates that have decided to torpedo Jim Jordan's quest to become Speaker of the House, and as a matter of fact, he got fewer votes this time than he did on the first go round. So the drive for a Speaker of the House continues in the House of Representatives. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, Rex, he's asking about this. And, okay, so if you don't support Jim Jordan, well, then who would you support? I can tell you, Rex, they would probably say 3 people. Patrick McHenry, you've got Steve Scalise, perhaps, and Kevin McCarthy. Those are the 3 that those moderates would more than likely support. Rex, I appreciate the call. I'm going to look up the latest on Jim Jordan just because I feel like I need to know, and I'll let you folks know. Coming up next on Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. By the way, Joe Biden is returning from his trip to Israel. He is set to make a primetime address tonight from the Oval Office on the Israel-Hamas war, so something else to look forward to from the president. There is a lot going on. I've been covering a lot of this news for you this morning. I want to take a couple more of your phone calls, including Dan calling from Sebastian, Florida on Red Eye Radio. Dan, how are you?
Hello, it's a pleasure to talk to you, sir. I actually called up to talk about my consternation with the hospital bombing, but what it is that there's only one fact. There's only one truth. And you brought up the laptop from hell, and it goes back to the same thing. I'm just a old retired electrician, but when I read Miranda Devine's book about it, I knew what the facts were, and these people come out and say, "Oh no, it's the other way." I knew what the facts were. This hospital deal in Israel. It's horrible, and the fact that I heard, I think it was about 6 o'clock this evening, that the rockets hit the parking lot, and that the casualties were in the dozens, not the hundreds. And I sure hope Biden knew a lot before I did what the facts were.
Well, yeah,
and it didn't matter.
Well, here's what I would say, Dan, and I appreciate the call. A couple things. Number one, yes, and we talked about this last night, the rocket, it looks like it hit the parking lot next to the hospital, and the hospital still sustained a lot of damage. I don't know how many people have been killed. I've seen, you said, a couple dozen. I'm still seeing in some reports a couple hundred. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what when they clear out all the rubble, how many casualties there are. But see, the bigger point that I am focused on is the amount of media that were at the time focusing on who did it. and they were blaming Israel. And here's the bigger issue, is that they were blaming Israel for the bombing of the hospital, even when there was substantial evidence to show that it was not Israel, or before there was evidence at all about who did it. So they were blaming Israel before all of the evidence was in, and even when the evidence started to come in that it clearly was not Israel, they were still blaming Israel. And meantime, as I said last night, I mean, we in cities all across the Middle East, you had embassies being surrounded. You had embassies being vandalized. I think some of the embassies were actually burned to the ground, or at least burned, even before the evidence was in. And so part of me is thinking, as we look at all of this, is that they could have actually, this mob of people inspired by what they believe, or what they were led to believe was an Israeli attack on a Gaza hospital. People could have been killed. People actually could have been killed. But as I keep saying, and I know I sound like a broken record on this, it really doesn't matter to these Arab nations. It doesn't matter what the truth is. They will continue to blame Israel. And Rashida Tlaib, this goes back to the first hour, Rashida Tlaib was out there in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, and she was blaming Israel, even though at this point we absolutely know that it was not Israel. And so this is, I'm assuming this is going to be one of those lies that the Harvard students, I was talking about that earlier, Harvard students also having their little die-in, and they are still perpetuating the same lie.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. I want to get to some of this audio and also some of your calls as well. I'm going to blow through some of these stories that really do need to be told. And one of the things that is going on this morning is there's a great story about crime in the streets. And I know we've been very Israel heavy, as we should be, regarding what's going on with Israel and Hamas and all that. But there's other things that are going on. And I thought this was really interesting. This is out of Los Angeles, Sherman Oaks, California. I used to actually live in Sherman Oaks. This is a post from a local journalist in Los Angeles, and it just plays right perfectly into this narrative that the Democrats are soft on crime, and that is killing, number one, legit businesses, and number two, it is killing cities as well. He says, this is Jonathan Hatami. Over the weekend, he says, a woman was arrested for slamming her car into stores, destroying several businesses, and burning a car in Los Angeles. He says that she was released on no bail. She was just, because, bail reform, right? Because bail is somehow racist. And so this woman was released on no bail, again, after slamming her car into stores, destroying several businesses, burning a car in Los Angeles. She's released on no bail. He goes on to say yesterday she went on a crime spree, setting approximately 10 fires, almost killing 2 people who were sleeping in a car, and completely destroying a florist shop, Mark's Garden in Sherman Oaks. He goes on to say, my thoughts and prayers go out to Mark and all of the victims here. This is not prioritizing, he says, public safety. And he's absolutely right. In Los Angeles, you folks listening on KABC in Los Angeles, can I just ask, you folks in Los Angeles, why are you still there? I mean, I get the palm trees and the beaches and the weather. It's all great. But, man, how you folks continue to live there is beyond me. Anyway, this guy, Jonathan Hatami, says, my thoughts and prayers go out to Mark and all the victims. This is not prioritizing public safety. $0 bail and George Gascon have completely left out the victims and the safety of our communities. He says, it isn't right. We must take L.A. back. I don't know how you do that. How do you take the streets of America back? I mean, you know, we could all talk about the Second Amendment, but the reality is that it feels like some of these cities are so far gone because of the policies of the Democrats that there really is no way to be able to take these cities back. And as the Republicans are doing everything that they can to take back, you know, the White House and take back the Senate and do whatever they can to build a majority, a stronger majority in the House of Representatives, you know, the city streets, they're ultimately going by way of disaster. Because we've got all of these homeless people. We've got all of the gang problems that's going on. We've got in Massachusetts. Did you see this in Massachusetts? The governor of Massachusetts is saying we simply cannot, you know, accept any more migrants. So you've got all of these different issues that are going on in city streets all across America. And the question has to be asked, okay, so how do you get these city streets back? He brings up a great point. You know, how do we retake the streets of Los Angeles? How do we retake the streets of New York? How do we retake the streets of Chicago? How do we retake the streets of Washington, D.C.? I don't believe that you can. And you know why that is, right? The reason why I believe that we cannot retake these streets is because oftentimes the people who are most victimized by the bad policies of the Democrats still vote for that same party, still vote for the Democrats. So it's like this endless cycle of bad decisions by people who are Democrat. You've got the politicians who make bad decisions like, you know, bail reform and, you know, all of these other things, soft on crime policies. So they do these things, and the people who live in those districts, the Democrats who vote these people in, they suffer the consequences of these decisions, but they still vote for the same type of person in the next election. And so, quite frankly, friends, it really is hard for me to feel sorry for these people. I don't. I don't feel sorry for them because they do it to themselves. You know, sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about. I've got a lot of friends still in Los Angeles, and, you know, I ask them these kinds of questions. You know, why did you vote for that district attorney again? Why did you vote for that city council? Why did you vote for that mayor? Why did you vote for that school board? If you have negative results, then why didn't you vote for a different result? That's always the stunning thing. It's like, the city's going to hell. Really? Who'd you vote for as mayor? Well, I voted for the Democrat, of course. Well, then this is your own fault. You know, there are cities, and then I promise I'm going to move on. There are cities out there that have had years of Democrat rule. And you can see whether we're talking about city councils, whether we're talking about, you know, mayors, and they've got just years, generations. And over the years, as the Democrat Party has become more and more radical, these cities go into worse and worse disrepair. Whether we're talking about the schools, whether we're talking about housing, whether we're talking about crime. And so you can actually track this stuff. And so when, you know, the guy, I was reading his tweets and, you know, he said, and I hear people say this all the time, we've got to take back the streets of America. Well, to do that, you have to talk some sense into the people that are voting the party that is destroying those streets into office time and time and time again. 866-90 Red Eye. Joe Biden. So he is going to have a little speech tonight. Apparently, he's going to address the people of America. And he said some rather bizarre things, and it's been well documented. But I want to play you some things that Joe Biden said and the reaction from Ari Fleischer. He was on Laura Ingram's show last night, and I loved his reaction. Now, you know that Ari Fleischer used to be the White House press secretary for George W. Bush. And so this is a guy who knows, because Fleischer was with George W. Bush during 9/11. And so he has been through it. But this is what Joe Biden said. Of course, you've heard this before.
And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things.
So Ari Fleischer heard that, and he says on Laura Ingraham that is exactly the wrong thing to say about Hamas. Just basically saying, well, they're the other team. Memo to Joe Biden. They're a terrorist organization.
The second thing he did that was just horrendous was inside that statement where he talked about the other team, which is a weird way to put it. He talked about how it didn't appear that Israel bombed the hospital, but then he said, quote, there's a lot of people out there who are not so sure. He's talking about the protesters in the streets of Lebanon and in Jordan. Why is he giving them any credence whatsoever? Why is he even citing them as being a source that should be worried about? Why doesn't he just say they're wrong? Israel didn't do it, and stop right there.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, for Ari Fleischer, he's right. And a lot of people echoed that sentiment. And as I've said 1,000 times, you could present information to those nations that hate Israel, proving their innocence, but it simply won't matter whether it is, Jordan and Iran and some of these other places. They're not going to accept the truth. And you could put, Rashida Tlaib and the students at Harvard into that same bucket. The other thing Joe Biden said, and this was in a separate statement, he had a message for the people of Israel. Listen.
I understand, and many Americans understand. You can't look at what has happened here to your mothers, your fathers, your grandparents, sons, daughters, children, even babies, and not scream out for justice. Justice must be done. But I caution this: while you feel that rage, don't be consumed by it.
So Joe Biden is lecturing the people of Israel of being consumed by rage. Now, these people have seen their babies mutilated, their mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters, and husbands and wives killed and kidnapped by the thousands. Who the heck is Joe Biden? Lecture anybody about whether or not they should be consumed by rage. And Ari Fleischer had a great thing to say about this because, he calls out Biden and he says basically the same thing that I just said, which is, who the hell do you think you are, Joe Biden?
When he said that Israelis should not be consumed by rage, who the hell does he think he is? I sat in on every single summit meeting with foreign leaders when they came to the United States after September 11th and met with President Bush. Not a one of them. Not one said to President Bush, the Americans shouldn't be consumed with rage. Instead, they just came to support us. So President Biden, who said some good things, never should admonish or lecture Israel about how to react like that.
He's absolutely right. That is Ari Fleischer, and he's got some great points. I want to say hello to Steve, calling from Los Angeles on Red Eye Radio. Steve, how are you?
Oh, good, Dan. I've got a couple things to say. I know you've got a lot of callers and a lot to say. I live in Los Angeles. I'm from Wyoming originally, which is one of the most red places. I've lived in L.A. for almost 30 years. Up until a few years ago, it was great to live here. Since then, my motorcycle was stolen about 15 months ago. They caught the perp. He had priors. In fact, he'd stolen one or two other motorcycles. They sent me a victim impact letter saying part of his probation was he had to give me $1,500, which was less than half of the damage he did to my bike. They caught him, obviously. Since then, I've been calling all the time, and they basically tell me the letter was just to make you try and feel better, but you'll get no money.
Right.
I have a property management company. People have their mailboxes broke into with screwdrivers. My mail was stolen from the post office when I dropped it in a mailbox. The criminals find a way to fish it out of the mailbox. So now I have to make sure the post office is open and take it inside. They washed the letters or the checks that was for my clients, the owners of properties. This is a major felony, and the people, they don't even worry about crime in L.A. So thank God, 2.5 years ago, I bought a house in Florida, and I will be leaving L.A., and I'll put a nice sign on my U-Haul showing all the people all the way across America why I'm leaving California. But the real reason I called was I watched Brett Baer talk to Leon Panetta the other night, and I have a DVR, and I DVR'd it, almost everything I watched. So I'm watching Brett Baer, and Panetta's sitting there, and you can tell he's just laid back, having a nice chat, thinking this whole conversation is going to be about Israel and Hamas. And Brett Baer, towards the end, says, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the 51 intel agents that helped Biden win he didn't say it as much as I would. I would have lambasted his ass.
Right.
But you could tell Leon Panetta start getting fidgety and knowing he has to lie. And just like the Hamas protectors lie, Panetta and all these cockroaches, and that's what they are, they lie about this. The FBI had Hunter's laptop. They had that laptop when he was being impeached for calling Zelensky regarding corruption in Ukraine.
And Steve, and Steve, hey, I got to put you on. Hey, Steve, I got to put you on hold. I'm late for a break. You bring up great points. I'm going to add something to that. Steve, hold on. 866-90 Red Eye. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Go.
It's Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. They return next Sunday night, Monday morning. By the way, you can find out more about me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook as well. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Got a lot more straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So much to continue to talk about. We have been going over all things Israel. We've been talking about the lies of the media. I have a whole segment, by the way, that I haven't even done yet, where it's an example of how the media has been lying and was lying about the who bombed the hospital in Israel. But I think we probably hammered that thing to death. But it's just, it's clear that the media sold the story that it was Israel that bombed the hospital early on until they had actual evidence that Israel did not bomb that hospital. But the media went just crazy with the story. And when you look at the tweets, when you listen to the audio, they definitely punched the part of the story that accused Israel of these bomb strikes. And so now there's a lot of folks that are looking at that story, and, it's yet another reminder that you can't always trust what the media is selling. And this is, again, yet another example. President Biden is going to be addressing the nation tonight. We have been talking at great length about the various funding packages, aid packages that President Biden is putting together. One of them, $100 million going to the people of Gaza. The problem with that is that there's no mechanism. From what I understand, I'm reading up on, what the president wants to do, although not all the details are out yet. But there's no mechanism to ensure that money isn't going to end up in the hands of Hamas, because there's all kinds of funding or aid that goes to Gaza. The problem is that it never really makes it to the people of Gaza. And so the people of Gaza, they're so angry. This is the crazy bass-backwards thinking of the Middle East, because you have all of this funding going to help the people of Gaza, yet guess what happens? Hamas gets it. Yet you've got all the people of Gaza, they're angry with Israel. Doesn't make any sense. They ought to be pissed off at Hamas. Hamas is the ones that are keeping them down. Hamas was the ones that the terrorist organization that wouldn't let them evacuate to the south. So you've got that story out there. You've also got apparently now the president. Word is from the Wall Street Journal and a couple of other places that they are crafting a $100 billion with a B, a $100 billion aid package, and it's going to include Israel, Taiwan, and mostly Ukraine. Now, I want to go through that again, because I want to make sure you heard exactly what I said. Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine. And word is Ukraine's going to get the most money. So what they did, and this is such a dirty trick, and this is what angers me so much about Washington, D.C., is you have this majority, apparently, at least, maybe 60, 70 billion of that, 100 billion, is going to go to Ukraine. They tie in Israel. Israel, I guess, has asked for $10 billion in assistance to deal with all of this going on with Hamas. And now the Hezbollah in the north is attacking Israel. So now you've got a war going on two different fronts. And so Israel needs about $10 billion. So what they're doing is they're tying the Israel aid with the Ukraine aid. The reason why they're doing that is because they know darn right well that there's no possible way that the Republicans would vote for another $60, $70 billion in funding for Ukraine. At least not with some sort of a safeguard or accountability measures. And this is the problem with Washington, D.C. in funding, by and large, is they lump all of these things together. So if you're a Republican and you're against more funding for Ukraine, which, there's a lot of Republicans that are saying that. If you're against funding for Ukraine, but the package comes with funding for Israel, well, you can't possibly vote no funding for Israel. Our longest ally, one of our longest running allies, and our only true ally in the Middle East. Well, then how could you possibly vote against that? You can't. So you have to vote for the entire spending package. That's what I hate about Washington, D.C., because all of these things, and I've argued with politicians about this, all of these things should really be standalone measures. If I'm a congressman and I'm in charge of the purse strings in Washington, D.C., I've got $10 billion for Israel. Check. Yes. $60, $70 billion for Ukraine. Can we talk about this for a minute? But that's what Washington, D.C. does. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. In the last hour, as we were wrapping up, I was having a conversation with Steve. I'm going to go back to him because, Steve, I wanted to ask you a couple of things. We're talking about the laptop from hell, and we're talking about because I went on this whole rant about, lies in the media, lies in Washington, D.C., and I used the laptop from hell story, Russian disinformation, as an example of one of those lies that came not only from Washington, D.C., and these, 51 intelligence officials, but also the media, et cetera. And it was a whole part of a bigger monologue. But Steve, you pointed out that, and it's true, that these folks knew, and Joe Biden knew when they put out that letter, that the laptop from hell was a credible story. And Brett Baer, you were talking about Brett Baer from Fox News, who cornered Leon Panetta. And he's done this a couple of times, by the way, Steve, with some of these other 51 signers saying the laptop from hell was Russian disinformation. And, Panetta, he shows absolutely no remorse. But, Steve, as you were saying, these folks knew the laptop was legit when they put the letter out because the FBI had the laptop.
Well, you know what? Panetta and all of them have to keep lying. They cannot tell the truth. They can't change because what they engaged in was election interference. 1,000%, that's election interference. It came from social media. It came from 90% of the media, and 51 intelligence agents lied. And there's plenty of polls that show 15% of the people that voted for this corrupt criminal in the White House would have either voted not at all or for Trump. That's election interference.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's more than that, Steve. It's a stolen election.
Absolutely.
And Absolutely. In Washington D.C. these days, and then I'll let you get the final word on this. But when you start talking about quote unquote stolen elections, you've got the Nancy Pelosi. There's an audio bite out there today, as a matter of fact, where she's talking about attacks on democracy and all of this other BS. And the reality is, if you would like to talk about the real attack on democracy, it came from the social media companies. It came from the mainstream media companies. It came from, those who were supportive of Joe Biden, who put this, this disinformation story out, knowing they were lying. But as you said, their lies impacted an election. It ended up into a stolen election. And ultimately what that means is that for the American people, we can't trust these intelligence agencies ever again.
When it comes to Washington, D.C., first of all, I never call it that anymore. I call it Washington, DNC. We have a corrupt IRS. We have a corrupt DOJ. We have a corrupt FBI. The CDC is probably corrupt. 95% of that fecal dump votes left, either Green Party or Democrat. America needs to wake up and turn off the Kardashians to see what's happening to our country.
Do you know, it's funny you say that, Steve. I have been, and you have that history of, you're the guy that has journalism experience, right? Is that you? Or was that another Steve in Los Angeles?
Well, no, I worked in radio, but I wasn't ever a journalist.
Got it. Okay, well, let me throw this out there too. Is Molly Hemingway had this great article about how we can never trust the intelligence agencies. I'll take that a step further because, as you said, they're not repenting. But I'll throw that out a step further and say, the mainstream media outlets, they're also not repenting. And so, for those of us who watch and pay attention to these kinds of things, it is hard to gain that trust back. I think that I've been watching with such disgust that the American people seem so incredibly infatuated with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. This whole... and it's like, I'm a nightmare to live with because my wife just is infatuated by this story. And she starts bringing this up. I start monologuing about, all the things that I would say really matter. But you know what, Steve? I think part of why people are infatuated and really intrigued and interested by the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift thing is because they're so tired of all of these other stories because they don't really know what to believe anymore. Steve, I got to ask you another question, though. I was talking about Los Angeles, and earlier you had said that you were moving away from Los Angeles and you're going to move to Florida. And there's so many reasons. I'm from people who may know a little bit about my history. I've filled in for a time now on Red Eye, and I host a local show in Nashville. People know that I left California many years ago, and there's many different reasons why. I think I was one of the first from the current wave to leave California, disgusted by what I was seeing. But what is the one reason why is there like one overriding reason why you're leaving California? Because I was asking the question, why do people stay?
The biggest reason that people move here or will put up with the nonsense is the weather's insane. I live in West LA. Almost every day is 72 and maybe a light breeze and sunny. It's 320 days a year. You can go have a picnic or go play golf or tennis, volleyball. It's going to be beautiful. I grew up in Wyoming. You get like maybe 40 days a year like this, and it's the weather. But the biggest thing is crime has always been part of the big cities, but now criminals are excused. And everybody's beginning to see that if you want to end crime, you have to have punishment, consequences. And the left is engaging in this incredibly stupid experiment where they don't want to, they want to just let criminals do what they want to do, and they think that's going to get better. It's not. And they're going to have to do some serious ballot harvesting, or they're going to get their butts kicked next year.
Oh, you know what, Steve? Somebody flagged this tape. Steve, after the next election, you and I are going to have a talk, because I again, had this whole monologue about how the people, the Democrats are, ruining the cities. And one of the reasons why is because the people that are victimized by Democrat rule keep voting for the damn Democrats. You're right, Steve. We'll have to see what happens in the next election. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to run. I'm running late for a break. 866-90-RED is the phone number. Thank you very much for calling, Steve. 866-907-3339.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Roadside inspections all begin with the driver interview, during which the officer will gather basic information from the driver and prepare the driver for the inspection. The officer will also be evaluating the driver, determining if the driver can speak English, is under the influence of anything, has an illness, or is fatigued. The officer will ask the driver for required documents, including vehicle and driver credentials, the driver's log, and shipment paperwork. The officer may also conduct a vehicle inspection. Before beginning the inspection, the officer will take steps to make sure the inspection can be done safely. These include chalking the wheels, wearing personal protective equipment, and explaining what will be required of the driver. The driver needs to pay close attention to these instructions so that the vehicle inspection can be conducted in a manner that is safe for the inspection official. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Dan Mandis here, in for Gary and Eric. 866-90-RED-EYE. Want to say hello to, this is Robert calling from one of my favorite places in America, Charleston, South Carolina. Robert, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Robert in Charleston.
Yes, I was just going to say, yes, that's right. I was just going to say that the 51 intelligence agents probably thought that they were working actually as expert witnesses. In German, they call that a Gutachter. That means somebody who gives expert opinions. And the 51 intelligence agents were actually being just asked, as far as I can tell by the letter that they wrote, whether this letter could be, whether the laptop could have been designed by Soviet Foreign Intelligence or by FSB I think that's Section 5 of the SSB. I'm not sure anymore. They probably changed it over the years. But in any case, if that would be a logical fictional story, which they would have created. And yes, I believe it is. It's 100% sex and combined with illicit drugs in a hotel room or something like that. That's perfect. But that's exactly what they would have designed. And that's exactly what was on that laptop. So I don't see why they should have really apologized, because nobody could prove anything at that point in time. They were just asked to give their expert opinion on this. And,
hey, Robert. So, but let me say this, is that when they put the letter out, they knew that the laptop was true. They also intentionally put that letter out to give Joe Biden cover, to give him something to say. Remember, and I'm going by memory now, Robert, but there was some congressional testimony when they were investigating all of this. And the investigation found that Antony Blinken helped create the letter by recruiting all these intelligence officials to create the letter. And Blinken wanted a job within the Biden administration, which we now know that he got, obviously, as Secretary of State. But all of these other folks as well wanted Joe Biden to win. But they knew that the laptop was real, or a lot of them did. And then they helped with the blackout. Hold on, Robert. Remember, they also then helped with the media blackout, where they wouldn't report on the laptop, or they would try to discredit the laptop. You also had a bunch of former FBI agents working at various social media companies helping with the blackout on that side of the story. So they used to work for the FBI, then they go work for Facebook, and they're working with the intelligence agencies, and everybody's sobbing. When you've heard this word before, Robert, colluding to discredit this thing. It was a whole thing within Washington, D.C. and the swamp to help Joe Biden. And I know what you're saying, Robert. I know that when they wrote the letter, they said it had all of the earmarks, I think, or something to that effect. But they knew what they were doing. But they knew what they were doing. They knew that it was real, yet they wanted to try and cast doubt on its credibility. But they knew that it was real. So, I mean, we can argue semantics all day long, but I think that they were wrong in what they did, because they lied to the American people, and they banked on their own supposed credibility as experts to sell the Russian disinformation. I'm going to let you have the last word. I've only got 30 seconds. Go.
Well, the thing is, that may all be true, but in the Soviet Union, even in the United States, there's a lot of intrigue going on, and you never know really what's going on. And when you're asked to just make a decision based upon what you know about Soviet foreign intelligence, is this the way they would do it? The answer, in my opinion, would be 100%. That's precisely what they would put on the tape. A guy connected up to a hooker having sex at the same time, perfect.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right. I kind of sort of get Robert's logic. we're going to have to agree to disagree, because I think this whole thing, this whole ugly episode, all part of the swamp.
Has someone in your family lost a job recently, and now you can't afford your mortgage payment? Or do you have a rental property and your tenants aren't paying you? We can come to the rescue and pay you cash for your home immediately. Yes, sell your home and get cash all over the phone without dealing with real estate agents or having to waste time showing your home to lukewarm buyers. You don't need to lose your house to foreclosure. If you have equity in your home, we'll buy your home and give you cash within days, all in a simple over-the-phone and virtual process. Call now before your situation gets worse. Sell a home you can't afford or just need anymore and get the cash you need today. Call this number now.
Call 800-527-4903. That's 800-527-4903. 800-527-4903. Again, 800-527-4903.
Paid for by Airtime Media.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control of your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank accounts, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problem now by calling the experts at U.S. Tax Shield and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. U.S. Tax Shield offers a price protection guaranteed quote to get you protected today. U.S. Tax Shield is A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau, so call now. 800-785-9132. That's 800-785-9132. U.S. Tax Shield. 800-785-9132.
The IRS, the world's most aggressive collection agency. They can seize your property, bank account, and garnish your wages. They cause sleepless nights for millions of Americans. Don't be one of them. If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS or state, get protected today. Call 800-312-9970. Coast One Tax Group, protecting your bank, home, and your sleep since 2008. With hundreds of 5-star reviews and an A+ on the Better Business Bureau. Call Coast One Tax Group, 800-312-9970. Stanley from New York owed $93,000. The IRS placed a levy on his bank account. Coast One released the levy and settled with the IRS for $2,000. Mark in Michigan owed $225,000. After Coast One stepped in, Mark walked away paying less than $1,500. Call Coast One now. A 10-minute call can save you up to 93% on your back taxes. Get your fresh start today. That's 800-312-9970.
Check out all the latest in news, events, trucking information, and podcasts at Red Eye Radio's website at redeyeradioshow.com. That's redeyeradioshow.com.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So the whole battle for the Speaker of the House, Don Bacon is a Republican, and I think he's out of Nebraska, House Armed Services Committee. And he is one of many who have said that they will not support Jim Jordan, and he was on Fox News. This is what he had to say.
Are you worried of what this is going to do to the country, leaving this in limbo?
Well, personally, those 8 people that got rid of Kevin McCarthy should be saying that right now, and also the small group on Steve Scalise. I support giving Patrick McHenry, the Speaker Pro Tem, more responsibilities and authorities. We can give him authorities for budget, the border, Ukraine, Israel. We can do that, but it's going to take legislation to do so.
Okay.
So we can do that.
I have to leave it there, but what's happening next? Are we going to see anything happening in the next few minutes, couple hours? What do we know?
Well, I'm not in Jim Jordan's private circle there where they're discussing this, so I really don't know.
Okay.
But we're confident next vote he's going to lose 5 or 6 more votes. He's going to be going backwards.
All right. So, and this is something that Jordan, again, lost the first one, lost the second one. And I told you yesterday, I was sharing with you the story, some of the behind-the-scenes wrangling that has been going on with all of this. And there's a few things that are happening. And typically this kind of, hijinks and shenanigans in Washington, D.C. Isn't always made so public, but right now it is with the battle for the Speaker. So you've got all of these sort of warring factions within the Republican Party. And by the way, the Democrats are out there just laughing at us. But you've got the folks that were pro-Kevin McCarthy. You've got the folks that are pro-Jim Jordan. And then you've got, some of these other, groups as well. But the bottom line is the folks that were pro-Kevin McCarthy or pro-Steve Scalise, they're not going to vote for Jim Jordan. And so I think one of the reasons why you're seeing Jim Jordan losing support, I think, is because there is and we talked about this last night, there is a hardcore pressure campaign going on within the Republican Party, where it's Jim Jordan's supporters who are really being, what's the right word, heavy-handed. They're being heavy-handed. And so now the situation is that it's not about Jim Jordan. What they're saying is it's about Jim Jordan's supporters, because they're saying that Jim Jordan's supporters are and have been acting untenable. Trey Gowdy, I played audio for you from yesterday from Trey Gowdy. I'm going to play this again because it is worth playing again. They're asking Trey Gowdy, who, of course, as you folks know, spent many years inside Washington, D.C., probably still there, but he's no longer a congressperson. But, he had some inside intel, and they asked Trey Gowdy about all this and what's going on within the Republican Party. Kind of an interesting dynamic.
Jim Jordan was pretty well loved 5 years ago. He's much better loved now. So I don't think this is about Jimmy. It is about his supporters. And that is what I am consistently hearing up to and including in the last hour. It is not Jim Jordan. It is the fact that Kevin McCarthy was the victim of a drive-by shooting orchestrated by a small group of people.
And that's true. And so you have the same contingent that, were with Matt Gaetz, who were anti-Kevin McCarthy, who were now supportive of Jim Jordan. And so, and there's obviously some overlap and so on, but, that is part of it. This is truly within the Republicans in the House of Representatives. Whose side are you on? And it's almost like they're playing this game of chicken. Trey Gowdy also talked about how the Republicans, they just literally hate each other.
Politics is always fractured, but what they're doing in the room right now is really, they're trying couples counseling for people who want to kill each other.
Oh, my gosh.
It's not going having a marriage and family counselor for this level of division and these fissures. I cannot overstate how angry some Republican members are with Jordan supporters, not Jordan, his supporters.
Yeah. Harry, by the way, found me on Twitter, and Harry sends me a tweet at Dan Mandis Show. In history, has there ever been a time when the House could not elect a speaker like is happening now? If so, what's going on here? What has changed so much? But to get rid of McCarthy without a backup plan was stupid, unless they really just don't give a damn. That is Harry sending me a tweet at Dan Mandis Show, and Harry's right. There clearly was no plan, and no, this has not happened at any time in history. And I'm going to, be honest with you. As a guy who is supportive of Jim Jordan, I'm one of those nerds. I've actually have a favorite congressman. Jim Jordan is one of my favorites. I like his politics. I think that he effectively communicates. I think that this is a guy who is used to building, teams and teamwork and all that kind of a stuff. So I think Jim Jordan, personally is the right guy for the job. I was not a fan of Kevin McCarthy. And so if you're a conservative like yours truly, you're sort of stuck because you know that you're about to really lose the American people, because the American people are looking at all of this and, we just look like we can't govern. We look like we can't legislate. We look like we can't handle the responsibility. That's what it looks like. Now, I'm just wondering at this point, is this even about politics? Is this really even about, big government spending versus, lower government spending? What is it really about? Or is this just a battle over egos? And so you heard Don Bacon, I think his name was. He said that he is a fan of, his prediction is that Jim Jordan is not going to be the speaker ever. And I've spoken to a couple of different congressmen here in the state of Tennessee, where I host a talk show, who have also said that there's going to be a big struggle ahead. But it feels like it's getting to be more about personalities. That seems to be what it's about now. And yesterday, just for you folks screaming at the radio, I reported it yesterday. So that I know that Matt Gaetz, I wonder at this point with Matt Gaetz, who was one of the main instigators in, booting Kevin McCarthy. Well, people are saying that Gaetz is angry at McCarthy, not necessarily because of his politics, but because McCarthy didn't support Gaetz when Gaetz was being accused of, all kinds of nefarious things with underage girls and so forth, whatever. Byron Donalds, and by the way, they chose not to bring any charges against Matt Gaetz. And so as far as I can tell, I think that whole thing is over with now, which is why I'm not delving into all the lurid and sordid details. But Gaetz feels like McCarthy didn't support him at that very difficult time in his life. I also played audio for you from Byron Donalds, who sort of concurs with what Trey Gowdy was saying, that this is about the heavy-handed tactics of those supporters of Jim Jordan.
Was any of that a turnoff for some of these members?
I believe it was. I've talked to a couple of members where they felt that that's just not what they needed. I don't think that's what we should be doing right now. And listen, for all of the voters in our country, I think it's important for members to hear your voice, and I totally respect that. But I think that there are members up here who they want to be able to make this decision on leadership and then move forward. I think some of the pressure campaigns have backfired. They have not worked. And so I think that right now, under the leadership of Jim Jordan, I would request that people just take a break, take a pause, let the members work and figure this out amongst ourselves so we can elect Jim Jordan as Speaker, and then we can get back to the work that we have to do.
All right, 866-90 Red Eye. That is where we find Elisiana on Red Eye Radio. Thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Don, my best friend. I'm so glad you're on. I've been, while I listening, I've been walking the floors here in my living room. What's the matter, Don, with the Republican that is represented us? Let me tell you something. I'm a praying woman.
Okay.
I am a black. I'm so proud of it. I'm a black, conservative, Republican, born again, and I'm a praying woman. You know what I did, Don? I gathered 7 women. We're called the Magnificent 7. We sit there, we pray, and we're politically armed. We are against the squad. We coming against the squad. Ayanna Presley. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I moved 2.5 years to Darlington, South Carolina. I'm a fighter. I'm a radical fighter. Let me tell you, oh, man. Let me tell you, Don,
yes.
The representatives need to get their act. I had a daycare business for 25 years. They're acting like children, preschoolers. What the heck?
So let me ask you, Elisiana. So, what would you like to see the Republicans do? Because if they work with the Democrats, then the Democrats are going to make some requirements. Republicans are going to have to, stop the investigations into Hunter Biden and the intelligence agencies and so forth. If it were up to you, would you like Jim Jordan or would you like somebody else?
Of course. Don, every day I'm on the phone. I lobby on the phone, calling Washington. Jim Jordan is a fighter. Mm-hmm. He's a fighter. That's why they don't want him there. They don't want him in there because things will get done. Kevin McCarthy was good too. I laid on my stomach for 24 hours praying for that 1 point to get 218 points from Kevin McCarthy to get in. For Kevin McCarthy to get in, and 1 strike, they kick him out. What the heck? I'm a Christian. I don't want to curse. I don't curse. I said, damn in hell. What the hell wrong with the Republican Party? They're childish. They're division. What the Bible says, a house divided cannot stand. A house divided cannot stand. We got to get united if we want to win in 24. What's the matter with these people?
And Elisiana, I'm going to tell you this. First of all, I love your passion. The other thing that I love is, and I appreciate your call, the other thing that I love is how you're going out and you're recruiting others with that passion and you're getting involved. And I love that. And I think a lot of people who are Republicans are looking at what's happening here in America with the Republican Party, and we are disgusted and we are frustrated. And Elisiana, I very much appreciate what you're doing, and you have a great evening. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye. Dan Mandis here, and Deb has sent me a note on Twitter. She tweeted at Dan Mandis Show regarding the speaker race. This is a fight to get a speaker who listens to the people rather than a speaker who is a puppet for the big money lobbies. This is to save our country. There is nothing personal about it. I think my problem with the people that are anti-McCarthy is just what Deb is saying, is because I do believe that Jim Jordan is an extremely strong conservative. My worry would be any adjustments he might have to make to get the support that he so clearly needs. And again, I don't know what the Republicans are going to do. I think the whole thing is unfortunate because it feels like the moderates are going to start now talking to the Democrats to try and get a speaker passed. And let me tell you something. When we have to turn to the Democrats to help us as a Republican Party get a speaker confirmed, that is an absolute disaster. Mike is in Arizona on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good, Dan. Thanks for having me on. I just wanted to talk about the Biden speeches and an observation I made. When you listen to him when he's with Bibi Netanyahu yesterday morning and he's pledging alliance with Israel, he is very uncomfortable. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to have to say that stuff, but he has to because the optics would be bad. And then you look at this when he gets a little more comfortable when he's talking about how the Israeli people should feel, because he truly believes they should bend over and take it in the you-know-where. And the third one, you hear him get extremely confident and presidential when he's pledging $100 million in humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip that he knows will ultimately end up in the hands of Hamas and be used to launch more attacks against Israel. That was just my observation. I don't know how you feel about that.
You know what? I agree with you on several fronts. Mike, I appreciate the call out there in Arizona. One of the things that I would say is the reason why Biden is uncomfortable up there in front of Benjamin Netanyahu is because Biden knows that Netanyahu knows that it was Biden who financed the attack on Israel. I'd feel uncomfortable, too.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.